Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson's Happy Monday. People used to tell you that Donald Trump was stupid. Remember that? He's an idiot. Now, we're not going to sit here and tell you it was a smart idea to turn the White House over to Jared Kushner. It was not. But it's also true, if we're being honest, and we should be, that Donald Trump had far wiser instincts about American foreign policy than any leader in at least a generation. And he did it without the help of anyone. None of his advisors wanted to hear his views on foreign policy. In fact, they desperately wanted Trump to be quiet, but Trump wouldn't. What's the point of NATO? He asked, nearly 30 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. No one in Washington could answer him. Shut up, racist, they replied. But Trump just kept going in his Trumpy way. Why would we fight Russia, he wondered. Wouldn't making Russia our enemy just drive Putin into the arms of China and create the most powerful and dangerous anti-American bloc in history? No one bothered to answer him. In fact, for the sin of asking, they called him a traitor to his country. They impeached him for it. And then they started a war with Putin. But in retrospect, Trump had asked a deeply patriotic question. If Russia ever joined forces with China, American global hegemony, its power, would end instantly. You'd have the world's largest landmass and largest natural gas reserves allied with the world's largest population and world's largest economy. So a Russia-China axis would be not just more powerful than the United States, but much more powerful. It would have the scale to control a lot of the world's economy and trade routes and raw materials. It could project military force that, posturing aside, we actually don't have the power to stop. If Russia and China ever got together, it would be a brand new world, and the United States would be greatly diminished. Most Americans agree that would be bad. Now, as Donald Trump predicted very clearly, that is happening. Thanks to Joe Biden's reckless and self-destructive response to the invasion of Ukraine a year ago this week, the economies of Russia and China are intertwined. Chinese spending on Russian goods has increased by more than 60%. China now imports more coal from Russia than it has in the last 5 years. Chinese shipments to Russia, meanwhile, are up by nearly 30%. Companies like Ford and Toyota pulled out of Russia. They had to, remember that? So what happened next? Chinese automakers stepped in. Chinese car makers once made less than 10% of all cars bought in Russia. Now China makes a third of them. And you can see where this is going. The same thing has happened with smartphones and countless other consumer goods. Not surprisingly, the Chinese yuan is replacing the dollar in Moscow. Chinese currency now accounts for fully 1/5 of all trades on the Moscow Stock Exchange. That's up from less than 1% last year. So these are deep and growing economic ties, and they're formal. The thing about economic ties, however, is that they lead inexorably to military ties. So it shouldn't surprise you that China is actively helping Russia in the war against NATO, which we are leading. In other words, the country with more ships than any navy in the world has united with the country that has more nuclear-armed ICBMs than any country in the world to fight us through proxy in Ukraine. Well, that's scary. And the thing is, everybody involved seems to know it's scary and just how scary it is. Our leaders understand that their push for total war with Putin, which is unnecessary, could lead to the destruction of the West. They know that, but they're doing it anyway. In an interview with a German newspaper today, the Ukrainian President Zelensky casually mentioned that, oh, by the way, the entire world may soon go up in flames. Quote, if China aligns itself with Russia, there will be a world war. There will be a world war? If China aligns with Russia? Who could say something like that calmly? Since, as we just told you, China is aligned with Russia. It's already happened. That's not speculation, it's a fact. And as a result of that fact, according to Zelensky himself, hundreds of millions of people will die. No big deal, as long as we take Crimea. This is a very dark way of thinking. Zelensky himself is a very dark force. That is obvious if you watch him. It is unmistakable. Who could not see that? This man is a destroyer. He banned a Christian faith in his country and arrested nuns and priests. Oh, but he's a hero, claim our leaders, from Chuck Schumer to Mitch McConnell. No, Zelensky is not a hero. He is an instrument of total destruction. That is not a defense of his enemies. It's just true. And maybe that's why Joe Biden is drawn to him. Biden landed in Kiev today to promote another world war. Watch. Note the air raid sirens in the background. What's strange is there didn't seem to be any air raids in Kiev this morning. We checked. There were just air raid sirens at precisely the moment that Joe Biden appeared for a photo op. Even CNN's reporters on the ground in Kiev know that they've been in the city for the past 5 days and didn't hear any bombs or missile strikes or any sirens until the moment that Biden walked out for the cameras.
I've been here for the past 5 days. I have not heard any explosions. I have not heard any air sirens until about half an hour ago, right when President Biden was in the center of Kyiv.
Right. So here you have Potemkin air raid sirens, just the touch required in this, the most tightly scripted, most completely dishonest war in history, the fakest war. And the point, of course, is to sell Americans on yet another $500 million in tax dollars for Ukraine, for the Zelensky government. Watch this.
We've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems, anti-ship and air defense systems, all defend Ukraine, and that doesn't count the other $500 million we're announcing with you today and tomorrow. That's going to be coming your way. And that's just the United States in this piece.
Can anyone see how dark and crazy this is? Truly crazy? Yes, many Americans can see how dark and crazy it is. Look at the numbers. How many Americans support this war for democracy that Americans for some reason can't vote on? Why don't we have a national referendum on all this? As long as we're leveling a country on behalf of democracy, it might be nice to try democracy here, but no. It's all so grotesque. It defies imagination, really. But imagine if you were watching all of this spectacle from your home in East Palestine, Ohio, a home that is still stinking of chemicals you can't identify. So here you have the President of the United States personally visiting a corrupt foreign autocrat to announce $500 million more in your tax dollars to go to Ukraine. Meanwhile, you, stuck in some lost and forgotten part of Ohio, the state that helped build this country, have a mushroom cloud over your city. The animals are dying, the water is glowing. And yet for more than 2 weeks after all of this started with the famous train derailment, FEMA and the Biden administration have refused to provide any kind of financial assistance to you. East Palestine still hasn't even gotten a token visit from Joe Biden's token transportation secretary, Mayor Pete. And after 2 weeks, people in East Palestine are starting to notice. Watch.
What federal response?
The White House is under fire for its response to the East Palestine train derailment.
If it were in Washington, D.C., it would all be cleaned up and taken care of.
I've had massive headaches since it started.
And locals say they're feeling the effects of the toxic chemicals.
East Palestine resident Melissa Blake says 2 days after the toxic train derailment, doctors diagnosed her with acute bronchitis from chemical fumes.
It's hard to breathe. My chest is always tight. The coughing.
I'm 53. I've had 2 headaches in my life, and I feel like I've had one every day since the controlled burn.
My kids will never go play in our backyard again, which makes me very sad. Now it's never going to be safe for them, in my eyes.
Today, families like the Bayless lined up for a $1,000 check per person.
Is $1,000 enough?
Probably not. Honestly, it's probably not.
Ted Murphy doesn't believe officials who say there's no lingering health risks.
I gotta move because I'm not safe being here. There is no way we are safe.
But nobody cares, and they know that in East Palestine. But the contrasts are becoming too sharp and obvious. The American border versus the Ukrainian border. One doesn't matter at all. In fact, it's racist. The other is so important we'll risk nuclear war to protect it. Aid to Zelensky, unaudited, God knows where it's going. Nobody seems to care. And aid to East Palestine. We just can't afford it. Unfortunately, the people you just saw are not Ukrainian. So Joe Biden is not interested enough to visit. Unfortunately, no one in East Palestine thought to pay Joe Biden's son $80,000 a month. If someone had done that, someone had been wise enough to pay off the Biden family 8 years ago, things would be different. Here's how Joe Biden might talk to them now.
It's going to deliver much needed humanitarian assistance as well as food, water, medicine, shelter, and other aid to Ukrainians displaced by Russia's war. and provide aid for those seeking refuge in other countries from Ukraine. It's also going to help schools and hospitals open. It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to the Ukrainian people so they have something in their pocket.
So not everything that winds its way through Congress is of equal importance. Most legislation in Congress means nothing in the long term. Nuclear war means everything in the long term. So what's the issue on which both parties seem aligned? Oh, the issue that matters. So there is no opposition party. Both parties seem to agree that the administration that shot down weather balloons with $400,000 heat-seeking missiles is capable of navigating an incredibly complex conflict in Eastern Europe where the stakes are existential. No problem. We can pull this off. Everybody involved is Winston Churchill. No one on the Republican side seems outraged on a gut level that the President of the United States is personally visiting an autocrat in a tracksuit in Kiev while he ignores the exposure of thousands of American citizens to toxic chemicals we can't identify. So Republicans in the Senate have a leader. You might be interested in what he thinks is important. Here he is.
I'm going to try to help explain to the American people that defeating the Russians in Ukraine is the single most important event going on in the world right now. It will save us an enormous amount of money down the road if the Ukrainians can succeed. They're not asking for any of our personnel. They're asking us for financial help.
So the thing is, that's not rhetoric. Mitch McConnell believes what he just said. I'm going to help explain. You couldn't help explain how to get from here to the nearest gas station. You're beyond the ability to explain. And you're way beyond the ability to lead the opposition in the United States Senate. But for some reason, McConnell and so many other Republican leaders and talk show hosts have been completely brainwashed by the idea that the United States will benefit from a war with Russia. Well, now that Russia has joined forces with China to create a bloc against the United States that we cannot defeat, that will control perhaps the majority of the world. Really? And you did that, by the way. You laughed at Trump, and here we are, facing the end of control of a lot of the world because you so unwisely managed the power that you inherited. What's your answer now, Mitch McConnell? You're welcome on this show anytime to explain.
As I've always said, until they prove you otherwise, you just have to assume everyone's lying to you. Trust in this country is reaching a breaking point. You can't even trust the people who are supposed to protect you. And of course, I'm talking about the government. For years, the government's been lying, hiding, and stealing from you. They lied about Afghanistan, the Patriot Act. They even lied about Pat Tillman. They hid Hunter's laptop to put Joe in the White House. They shut down schools over COVID and then stole a bunch of pandemic relief for themselves. The people who are supposed to protect us are in it for themselves. But they at least used to act like they cared about the little guy. But when a toxic train wrecked in East Palestine, Ohio, they didn't even pretend to care. The Biden administration can't even find East Palestine on a map, and the whole town feels forgotten, and they can't trust anyone.
My daughter has asthma. She's been coughing. My son's been coughing. My son's room is in the basement. The basement tested the best air out of the whole house. How is that possible? So the machines they're using, is anybody calibrating them? Has anybody checked on them? It's just all for show? Or is there actually science behind it?
We're kind of like their little lab rats. Like, maybe you might get cancer 5 years, 10 years down the road. You might not.
But I know that it's not good. I know that they're lying to me. I know that they're lying to the nation.
Isn't that sad? A town being forced to live in a mushroom cloud is being told everything's okay. Meanwhile, kids are breaking out in hives. Pets are dropping dead and rivers are full of chemicals and dead fish. But the people who should care, like Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, won't even answer if he would drink the water. Watch.
Should the residents of East Palestine accept the assurances from the government, or are they right to be skeptical?
Well, they're right to be skeptical. We think the water's safe, but when you return to your home, you should be tested again for your water.
Would you drink the water in East Palestine?
The mayor said definitively, emphatically, that people can drink the water.
So he dodged, he didn't answer the question. And I'd be skeptical too. 500 tons of toxic chemicals turned my water kaleidoscopic. Wouldn't you be skeptical if your government told you to drink the water, then the water looks like this?
Wow.
Look at it. It's all in the bottom of the creek bed.
Video. How is anybody in this town supposed to believe the water's safe? How is anybody supposed to listen to the same EPA who told New Yorkers the air was fine after 9/11? How is anybody supposed to believe it's all safe when the people doing the tests are being sent out by the rail company whose train flew off the tracks? And how is anyone supposed to trust the rail company whose sloppy handling of all this only makes things worse?
The train derailment happened on the 3rd, and they kind of sat around on the 4th and 5th, not certain what to do. But on the 6th, they made a decision to dig a hole and take all the chemicals, the liquid chemicals from the rail cars, and dump it into an unlined hole, hence why we're going to have a big water issue. And they lit it on fire. It looks like a situation was mishandled on the upfront that created a worse scenario.
You don't think people in East Palestine are sitting there thinking, we really got screwed here? Especially after the rail company was a no-show at the town hall last week, where they said they were too scared of being in the same room with the people they may have poisoned. And then just waved around checks for $1,000, like chump change.
It almost angers me. And it ain't about the money, it's about health. It's almost an insult, you know? Think about $1,000 to them. It's like you giving your kid a nickel to put in his piggy bank. It's nothing.
$1,000 is nothing to a $55 billion rail company. Alan Shaw made $8 million last year, and he thinks these people can be bribed into taking $1,000? Shaw lives in a $4.5 million house. Here he is smiling in front of the mansion, while people in East Palestine are worrying whether or not they're going to get cancer. Does this look like the kind of guy people can trust? If it wasn't for public pressure, Norfolk Southern sleazy CEO Alan Shaw wouldn't even have showed up to East Palestine. But he finally did this weekend and said he was there for the little guy.
I'm here to support the community, and if you'll excuse me, that's where I'm headed right now to meet with some community members.
How did this exactly help? He called a cloud of toxic smoke over a small town in Ohio a success.
And what was his reaction when he saw the result in the cloud of smoke rising into the sky?
Frankly, that told us that there was success and that the opportunity for a much riskier event occurred because of what was in the rail cars.
Let's bring in the mayor of East Palestine, Trent Conaway, as well as resident Lenny Clavin. They both met with Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw over the weekend. All right, so Trent, this guy dodged the town hall. He said he was too scared to show up. He finally showed up after a lot of public pressure all week. How did it go down when you were there one-on-one with him?
He seemed sincere. He seemed like he cared, and right now that's the only thing, you know. Is it comforting? No, but you know, we have to trust him right now. As soon as he does anything that, you know, we feel that we can't trust, then, you know, I'll have to go back to media or government officials that are hiring me to, make him do what he said he's going to do. So.
Well, you tell me, first of all, if he does anything, and we'll blow it up. So, Lenny, this guy, as I said, ran away, and then he came back. Was he surrounded by guys with AR-15s? He said he was fearful of his life. That's why he bailed on the first town hall.
No, I mean, he wasn't surrounded by anybody like that. I feel as if he came, as honest as he could. I wouldn't want to be in Alan's shoes. There's a lot of negativity around everything right now. And, for him to show face after we asked him to come down, that's what we wanted. It's a start. He did that. He came to the community, he talked to the people, first responders, Mayor Trent. He talked to myself. He was, gave me the time that I asked for. So, I asked him to come man to man and talk to me, and we stood nose to nose. So, I thank him for that, but, you can't really trust any man, until he proves you to.
When you guys were nose to nose, what did you tell him?
I lost my ear.
Say it again, Jesse.
When you guys were face to face at the meeting, what did you tell him?
Well, first off, I told him thank you very much. And, I appreciate him making the time for me. I said, but I also had to let him know that, there was hurt in my eyes. The hurt in my eyes is the hurt that I know a lot of people in my community are feeling, the uncertainty. And, I told him that I can't sleep. I see what's been done in my town, in his face, in the middle of the night when I wake up, and I hope that, he does the right thing. It's a lot of people, a lot of great people are in great concern for their safety. I don't even know where to start with, that whole process. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information coming in. You have government telling you this. You have Ohio EPA telling you this. We have local officials. You have everybody on the internet giving their 5 cents, I do know that he told me this won't be fixed in one day. He's going to try to fix it as quick as he can. All the information is yet to be there for people. So I think that's where a lot of people are coming in to be concerned. I'll take his word for it and see how things play out,
Yeah, I think he has to prove himself to you. And Mayor, before we let you go, you saw President Joe Biden over in Ukraine. Did that make you feel slighted in any way? I mean, he hasn't really. Can he not hear me?
I got you. He asked, before we go, I can repeat. He said, with the president being in Ukraine today, did that surprise you?
Absolutely. That was the biggest slap in the face. That tells you right now he doesn't care about us. So
agreed.
He can send every agency he wants to, but I found that out this morning in one of the briefings that he was in the Ukraine giving millions of dollars away to people over there, not to us, and I'm furious.
On President's Day in our country.
Yeah, President's Day in our country. He's over in Ukraine, so that tells you what kind of guy he is.
All right. Well, listen, you two hang in there. Please let us know if we can do anything. And I'm glad you're holding Alan Shaw's feet to the fire. Hang in there, guys.
Thank you.